Hey, my name is Jason. I am the creator of xink, and I wanted to give you a quick intro to how to use the software. So from our documentation site at xinkjs.com, you can see it's just a quick one-liner. So we'll go ahead and grab this to get started with the wizard. We'll just use bun, typescript, and then we can cd to my API. Grab the install commands, and bun run dev. All right, so we're on port 5173. So if we open Postman, just do a GET request, we get a response of welcome to xink. So what does this actually look like? Take a look in VS Code here. And we've got our entry point index file. We're just creating a new instance of xink and exporting that. But in source routes, we have our root route here. And this is our GET request. So we just export HTTP verbs basically for what we want to handle. And as you can see here, right now we're bringing in a text helper from the event and using that to return the string. You can also just do this, do a quick save, and that does the same thing. So let's create another route inside routes here. Let's say user, and then it's going to have a parameter. So we'll create a folder in brackets of ID. So this is a param. And then we'll create our route file as well. So we'll just make this a simple GET request. We can just go ahead and grab what's in here. And then instead of text, we can grab params. And then we'll just kind of echo that parameter ID. So the ID here is the name of the param. So we can save that. And we'll go to the user route. We'll just say user 42. See if this works. Could not send requests. That's because we probably should make sure the server is running. All right, so we get that ID echoed back to us. So we could also do something like hello. So our problem here is that maybe in our application or our API, the user should always be a number. So how do we handle that? We can use validation. So if we go back here to the docs, we don't want to use validators, although that's an option. So you can either use validators or standard schema. We're going to use standard schema, which requires a standard schema compliant library like Zod or Valibot. So let's just grab this right here as a demonstration. And in our user ID route, so you have the schemas hook that gets created. Schemas is kind of a built-in hook, so you can have route hooks, and we'll look at that shortly. So for us, our schema is for a GET request, not a POST request. And not JSON, it's going to be params. And then we want this to be ID. And that is a number. We'll go ahead and install Valibot. All right, so we've got our schemas constant here. We're calling get, or maybe just to make things simple. Although you'll get the idea. Well, we can keep it that way. Params object of ID, which should be a number. We're exporting the hooks and adding schemas to that. All right, everything looks good here. So let's run this and try hello again. And this time we see we get an error, expected a number. So the validation is definitely working. We can take a look at 42 and we get that echoed back. But let's go back to hello. And this kind of looks a little bit ugly. How can we handle that a little bit better? If we go back to the docs and go to errors and schema errors, you can set up an error file to handle any errors in your API. So let's just copy this out. And under source, create a new error.ts file. Paste that in. All right, so we're importing the standard schema error from xink. And if the error is an instance of that, which the standard or standard schema libraries will throw a standard kind of error structure or object, so we can kind of catch that with this and then return JSON instead. And then any other errors we can handle with this right here. So let's see if that works for us. Now it's in a little bit better shape. Now we get the actual error and the path and all that good stuff. All right. And now that we've got a schema in our route, user ID route, we can actually take advantage of OpenAPI. So let's look at the docs on that. And we're going to go to the OpenAPI configuration. So in your entry point file, the index.ts, you can just define the path. We won't worry about the data and info right now, or maybe we can just leave that in there. So back in our entry point file, we're going to declare a path for our OpenAPI at this right here. And then if you want to do that, you can, but you don't have to. So let's just go to the bare minimum. And let's see if we have anything at /reference. And there we go. For our user ID endpoint, you see that it requires an ID, which should be a number, and that is required, and have your various cool things over here. So when you use this schemas export, we can create automatic OpenAPI docs for you. All you have to do is set a path for those documentations. And then the last thing we'll demonstrate that we talked about for a second is hooks. So hooks are executed for every handler you have, any valid handler in a route file. And this is just for this route. So if we did something simple like just a generic logger, we could just say console log, hit user route, and then when we do that, we need to make sure it's valid, otherwise it won't actually log. So you can see here, we console logged, hit user route. If you have validation and it doesn't pass, the hooks don't get executed. Now the schemas hooks will for validation or validators if you're using that instead, but the other developer hooks that you define will not get executed. it'll just send back the error instead of executing those. But nice thing is you have access to the event and any valid data. Actually, that's not what we want. We want valid in here. We can type. All right, so event.valid is going to have all of your validated data inside of it. So if we change this back to 42, hit send on that, it spits out all of our valid data that gets passed to the route handler. In our case, params ID 42. Now notice this is different than just passing in params and doing that. As you'll see here, the param is literally a string. It hasn't been coerced into a number, which is something that xink does for you. This is the actual raw param, whereas this is the validated params data from our schema. So that's a quick intro to xink. Try it out today. Thanks a lot.